What's up, good people? Welcome to the Game Changers podcast. I am your host, Didio Nassis. Now let's go change the game. What's up, good people? Welcome back to the Game Changers podcast. I am your host, Didio Nassis. We're here with an esteemed guest. Before I give you his name, I'm going to run down a couple accolades. All right? Ready? Let's do it. All right? He has written several dozen books, including Microsoft Office for Dummies and Breaking into Acting for Dummies. He's also written screenplays. He's also performed. He's also a stand-up comic, and he's also a television star. And I'm pretty sure it's a lot of et ceteras that I missed, and we're going to get into them if we have time. So, Game Changers podcast. Welcome, Wallace Wang, to the show, and now let's just change the game. Welcome to the show, man. What's up, man? How you doing?
Thanks for having me on your show.
Yes, thank you for being here. Thank you for taking the time to come through. And I just want to give you a big salute, start it off, man, because I'm a huge fan of people that's able to get the vision out of their head and put it on any type of media. In your case, it's super hard because you're writing. It's pretty intense, and for any creator, that's the hardest part about it. It's like getting that idea and just putting it out a certain way to make it a visual or actual something that you can consume as a consumer. So salute to you, man.
I think the hardest thing about creating anything, whether it's text or video or audio,
Mhm.
is just having the confidence that no matter how good or bad you think you are, you just have to do it. And you're going to make mistakes and you're going to fail probably horribly, but you just got to do it.
It's- That's a man. That's a huge fact because I've failed horribly. I'm still failing horribly, but I love what I do. This is, pretty much one of my passion projects. I actually love doing what I do, So I don't see myself ever giving up, regardless of the feedback, not feedback, or I'm not gonna give up. How about that? All right. So like let's talk about like your earlier, like how did you get started? Like I don't think you were born writing, right? So how did you get started?
Well, I've always wanted to be a writer, and I always got I took I accepted the myth that if you just went to school, got good grades, you'd get a good job, and life would be wonderful.
Me too. That's what I accepted. I thought that was the way, but it's not, right?
No, no, that I mean, some people are lucky to have a good job,
Mm.
but my first job was horrible. It was boring. Um, People would be yelling at each other in front of everyone, yelling and jabbing their finger in their face.
Wow.
And I remember my first job. I got blamed for something that happened 3 months before I was hired, and this
No.
woman was screaming in my face, and I kept thinking, how do these people put up with why
Mhm.
do people put up with this? And I'm looking at 30, 40, 50-year-old men and women getting yelled at on a daily basis and just taking it.
Right,
It
right.
was just verbal abuse, emotional abuse, and I was the youngest person there, and I just said, life can't be like this. This can't be what life is all about.
Right.
I got my college degree, so I thought, and I got good grades, so I thought, I'm going to have a good life. And I realized this sucks. I've got to do something other than just accept and hope somebody will give me a good life. I've got to go out and make it. And so that's how I decided I've got to do it because I've got no choice. It wasn't like I was born brilliant or I have this talent.
Mhm.
I mean, everyone has talent, everyone has skill, but you need that motivation to trust yourself.
Wow.
And I reached the point where I just said, I can't do this anymore. I've just got to trust myself,
Yes.
because otherwise I'm gonna go insane.
You know what? It's that eerie feeling. Some people call it the matrix. Some people just call it like they just say something's off. And what you're describing was I feel that almost all the time whenever I clock in, like this isn't right. I've been in situations, especially in manufacturing, like when I was a production planner. it's all kinds of chaos, and you have to take all kinds of blame as someone that's supposed to bring the materials into to the facility. So I've been trying to escape this matrix for like 10 years now, man. So, but salute to you for having that urge. And well, how did you get out? Like, what made you? What industry was that? That it was
It,
just
it was
so total chaos.
it was the defense industry because I'm a military history buff, and I had an
Oh,
engineering degree, and so I thought, well, with my engineering degree, I could work in the defense industry because I would be able to, make the next weapons, and I thought that would be kind of cool.
yeah,
And so that's how I got to San Diego. And San Diego used to be a big defense town, and it was just a horrible job. The job was boring, extremely simplistic. I think a third grader could have done my job. It was uh, so trivial,
right.
and I couldn't believe that people accepted this life. It was just horrible.
Wow.
And so how I got out of it was, um, so that General Dynamics was my first defense job. And I remember spending 1984. I started working in 1983 in the summer at General Dynamics. That was the company. And then 1984 was the first whole year that I worked there. And I remember going home. I'm from Michigan originally. Going home
Detroit, right?
yeah, outside of Detroit.
Okay.
And so I remember in 1984 going home at Christmas, and on New Year's Eve, I made a vow to myself that if I couldn't change my life in 1 year, I was gonna kill myself.
Wow.
And so the first week I got back to San Diego, I was
Wait.
going,
Wait. I don't want to. Like that was your proclamation. Like you were just like, all right, if
yeah,
this doesn't work, I'm just gonna end it all.
yeah. I was gonna just say, screw it. This is because if this was life,
Hmm.
I wasn't gonna spend the next 30, 40, 50 years of my life living this way.
And you know what? I've been there. I've felt like that before. I felt like that last week. Like, you know, but, but life is good, man. I'm sorry. Life is good, people. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mr.
Yeah,
Wang. I'm sorry.
life is good. But so the first week I got back, I was at that time I was going to night school to get my master's degree in computer science. And on the bulletin board, I saw a sign for another company in San Diego, another defense company that was looking for people who were close to graduating, which I was at the time, and they were interviewing people. So I called them up, got an interview. Then the second week in January, they offered me a job. And that suddenly opened my eyes that I thought it would take me a year to change my life. It took me 2 weeks, all because I was that focused. Because every day I was doing something to get out.
Yes.
And so 2 weeks, that's all it took. That amazed me. And then I wound up in another defense company, which was just as bad. But at least they weren't yelling at me. They weren't blaming at me for anything.
Mm.
They hired me because in the defense industry, when a company bids on a contract, they have to show the government they have the people capable of performing that contract if they get it. So they hired me and about 20 other people in anticipation that they would get this contract. And
Wow.
for 2 years, they got nothing. So for 2 years, I sat around doing absolutely nothing. And my friends told me, well, this is great. You're getting paid. And I'm like, yeah, I'm getting paid, but I'm showing up to work doing nothing
Doing
and
nothing.
feeling absolutely useless,
Right.
feeling like my life is just going by me.
Mhm.
There's no purpose in life. There's no satisfaction. There's no goal. And I remember waking up one morning and thinking, if I didn't have this job, what would be the worst that could happen to me? And I thought, well, I could be sleeping in the alley, fighting with rats and cockroaches with pizza crusts in the dumpster. And at that moment, I realized that would be a more exciting life than going into work, putting on a suit and tie, and sitting at a desk for 8 hours a day doing absolutely nothing.
Absolutely.
So I turned in my 2 week notice at that time with no job lined up, no plan,
Mhm.
nothing. I just said, I have to get out of here now. And that's what I did.
Man, that's heroic. You know, that really takes that really takes some some cojones, so some heavy thingamajiggers down there to do that, man. That's what? So okay. So what was next? So you quit and you wasn't homeless, so I'm pretty sure you had something saved so you can survive for a few months or a year or so, right? So
Y-
what happened after that?
Yeah, so well, when I had that job, I was saving up an incredible amount of money and living in this really tiny, dumpy apartment behind some guy's garage. It wasn't bad. It was a nice apartment. It was just small.
Okay.
But I was saving up a lot of money, and again, I don't know how much money I had, but I probably could have lasted at least 2 years, probably 3 to 5 years,
Uh,
without being in serious problems. But
yes,
again, I always knew if worse came to worse, I could always move back to Michigan and move in with my parents.
got
I
you.
mean, that was like the last resort, but I didn't want to do that because I would have felt like a failure.
Right.
So
Right.
I was writing for a computer magazine in San Diego at the time, just part time, selling articles once in a while, and that's how I started. I thought, well, I'll just sell more articles, and then more articles, and then I started writing books, and then the book income started to take off, and then I realized, oh, I don't really need a job after all.
Really? So like before that, like what was your first article? Do you remember? Like when did you figure like, okay, my writing's great enough or good enough so I can move it or sell it? Like, do you remember that time?
It was just simple articles like this was when personal computer market was just getting started. So it's articles about just how to use an operating system, how to use a word processor, how to hook up a printer to a computer. Just basically because back then
That was
personal
big.
computers, yeah, personal computers were brand new,
Yeah.
and so I kind of got lucky, and I rode the wave of the whole personal computer market when nobody knew about much about software, spreadsheets, word processors.
Yes.
And so I was writing articles about specific word processors, specific, operating systems, you know, the commands you would have to do, how
Mhm.
to save files, how to delete files, how to backup files. It's basic now, but back then it was all new.
You know what? I remember back in the 90s and a little bit of the early 2000s before YouTube, right? When you had to read the book that came with the hardware, right? So listen, it would be step by step information or how you installed your hardware and how to use it. And you had to read it. And you know,
And it was horrible.
yes, yes. but you but you had to use that because it was no YouTube, right? So and now you can just scan the barcode on the back of a product and then boom, now you have a YouTube instruction video on your phone. But is that like along the lines of some of the stuff that you were writing
Right.
or around that time?
Yeah, yeah, just simple things, how to get your word processor to work with your printer. Just, basic
Yeah.
things.
Wow. Listen, that's that's what we needed. That's dope. I think that's so fire. That's what we needed. So you went from there and you started getting more work, you started progressing, and then you started to elevate into books. Was it what type of books? Was it a novel, fiction? Was it, it okay, clinical? Was it like which field did you go into, uh, like on your first official book?
It was all nonfiction books about computer books.
Oh,
Uh,
okay, but
How to
and
use specific programs, how to use Word Perfect, how to use Microsoft Word, you know,
yeah,
how to use a modem, that type of basic books.
okay, that and again, that was much needed back then. So
Yeah,
that's
back then. Now it's you can get everything you want by googling it or YouTube.
right. And man, I gotta save this question for later on because I want to know. Well, I gotta ask it now before I forget it. So how do you? So your biggest competitor is like YouTube, right? So when you write a book like that, or some of the things that you're writing now, is are you competing with YouTube, or is it just a different type uh, avenue, you know, a different lane, and you're just not worried about it.
No, I'm losing to YouTube. I'm losing to Google. Books are useless. I used to make my entire income off of books.
Yeah.
Now I call it gas money. That's
Gas
about
money.
all I make now.
Gas money. No way. No way. No way. Because okay, so I'm all right. So
Well, I'll tell you this, at the peak of the computer book publishing, boom, I was making over $300,000 a year just off books, book
yes.
royalty. And then within a few years, it dropped to 28,000 a year.
Oh,
300,000 to 28,000 a year. And now it's down to about 4 or 5,000 a year.
no way.
Yeah. So, yeah, I can't compete against Google or YouTube because why would you want, who wants to read a book when you could just go to YouTube and find your answer right there and go on with your life?
So so how do you combat that? Like what's the answer to that? Or do you just continue to crank it out and not worry about it? How do you move on from that?
Oh, it's online courses now.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's the evolution of the game. Online
Uh-huh.
courses, mentorships, all of those, man. So, oh man, so because I that's what I purchased things like that. You know, if I wanted to learn about anything, I've either go to Udemy. That's where I started. Like if I wanted to learn about Facebook ads, I went to Udemy. That was my first uh, time knowing that I can pay for a course. I don't have to pay $3,000. Boom. But anyway, but now you get to learn from people that have done what you're trying to do and get their hands-on training. And you're gonna have to pay for it, people. You're gonna have to pay for it. But you can get hands-on training from the people that are experts in the game that you want to learn from. Um, man, I think that's pretty fire though. And I want to ask a question. I'm gonna go off rails here. So but I want to ask you about this movie star thing. So how are you a movie star? Not movie star, but television star. Like what television show were you a part of? Or
Oh, I,
series, I'm sorry.
I don't know where you got the idea. I was on television shows. I was in movies.
Oh, you was in
Oh,
movies.
yeah, I was an extra a lot because in Hollywood, they need people of all kinds. Like you would be perfect as an extra. Well, anyone would be perfect as an extra because they
Thank you,
need
man.
somebody in the background. And they don't want all the same. Like all white people. They want some white people. They want some Asians. They want some blacks. They want some, Arab-looking people. They want a variety. So it's extremely easy to be an extra.
Okay.
All you have to do basically is show up.
That's crazy. So I have tricked myself into thinking that I seen you on TV somewhere. Like I have totally fooled myself. Like, yo, I seen this dude. Okay. Let's talk about screenplays. Screenplays, like what was your first screenplay and how did that turn out?
Oh, horribly, because anytime you do something for the first time, you're probably not going to do it perfect or
Right.
even close to good. So, screenwriting is just like any skill. You write it and you think, "Oh, this is a great script," and you send it out, and
Mhm.
then nobody responds, and then you read it again, you go, "Oh, this is crap." Then you write the second one, and you think, "Oh, this was much better." You send it out,
Mhm.
nobody responds, and then you look at it again, you go, "Oh, this is crap," and you just keep improving.
Keep going. Okay.
Uh-huh.
So so what did you ever get anything did you ever write anything that was yes made made into something somebody put some money behind it and boom the masses saw it, not the masses but it was published or it was televised.
Yeah, the closest thing I got was in San Diego State. Had their film department was looking for scripts, and I submitted a sitcom, and they selected mine, and they filmed it for a student project, and they won a student Emmy. But just to kind of give you an idea how writers are treated in Hollywood, they never invited me. So they, I mean, they never told me about it. I had to read it in the San Diego website, San Diego State University website. They never invited me to the filming of my own show that I wrote for them
No way.
because writers are treated like basically garbage. That's why the writers are on strike right now because they get paid so little and they basically create everything.
I mean, that's messed up, man. Like, that's kind of crazy. So you wrote the thing and they produced it and made a like, and they never say, "Hey, Mr. Wang, this is what we're doing." You had
Nope,
no clue until they just handed you a DVD and like, "Hey, this is what we did."
they mailed it to me.
They mailed it to you.
I never met them in person.
No, that's so Hollywood is kind of. I mean, it's a tough game. That's a tough game. It sounds like a tough game to me. So
Yeah, but the writers are not like in theater. The playwright is considered the god,
mhm,
and whatever the playwright says goes. In Hollywood, when it comes to movies or TV shows, the writer gets things started, and then they're completely ignored from that point on.
got you. Because I guess because they have to turn it into like a huge production and oh yeah, I can see that. But nevertheless, man, I'm sorry that happened to you. But like, are you still working on screenplays or are you still
Oh yeah,
writing?
yeah,
Okay,
yeah. And each time I write another one, I think this is the best I've ever written. And then I look back and go, "Oh, look at all the flaws." But again, that's with everything.
got it, got it. So you do you consider yourself a perfectionist or is it just the process?
Um, it's just a process.
Just the
Every
process.
time I read a book, I think I did the best job I did with the book, and then when it's printed, I look at it and go, "Oh, I should have done this. I should have done that. I should have omitted this." And so it's a never-ending battle. You're always gonna look at it and go, "I could have improved it. I could have done it better."
I can see that because I guess I do that with editing sometimes. Like if I'm editing the podcast and I'm trying to make everything sound perfect, look perfect, and taking out all of the pauses or something like that, and it will never end up perfect because when I watch the preview on YouTube, I'm like, man, I should have fixed that. I should have fixed that. I
Right.
get it, but I know it writing it's a whole nother level, man. I know it's a whole nother level. I do want to have I got a question before I want to talk about the structure of game design, but
Okay.
I have a question. This is for me. This is for
Okay.
me. So I started writing a book about my gaming experience with Call of Duty. I started it in 2021, and I've only managed to get to chapter 6, right? So I stopped last summer. It's only because I can't write as fast like faster than my mind is going. Like I'm thinking too much, but I can't get what I'm thinking about on the paper fast enough. Like how do I fix that?
Well, you could try and just speak and record it and then transcribe it later.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one way of just getting it out there fast.
Mhm.
Another is just to just set up a process. Uh, write an hour a day, 15 minutes a day, 5 minutes a day. It doesn't matter, but just so you're doing it consistently,
Mhm.
and it just builds up. So if you write 5 minutes a day, by the end of the week, you've written a half hour,
Okay. So
and then
so what happened was I started writing myself, or typing, and I know, right? So then, hey man, then I saw this podcast, and this guy was like, "Hey man, if you're having trouble writing," he said just exactly what you just said. Start transcribing. So I started that, but then I started feeling like a like what I'm saying is not good. I was like, "Yo, what am I talking about? It doesn't sound fire." Like, so I just like, all right, I'm gonna put this on the shelf, then I'm gonna come back later on, man. So it's like you said, in the beginning. I think it's a confidence thing, right? So
but also when you're writing a book, think of who is your who is one person who would benefit from your book?
Hmm.
And that's the person you write the book for.
Hmm. You know what? That's great advice, because I was thinking about writing this for everybody, like,
You're never
everybody.
gonna you're never gonna please everybody. I,
Wow.
I remember doing a stand-up comedy show where I thought I completely bombed,
Mhm.
and a guy came up to me and said, "Oh, I really enjoyed your show," and I thought he was like joking or something, but no, he seemed sincere. And another time, I remember I was in this massive auditorium, maybe 1,000 people, and it was like one of the best shows ever. The crowd was laughing and just loud. They loved me. And then after the show, I went to the bathroom and I was in the stall,
Yeah.
and there was no way nobody knew I was there.
Yeah.
And then the show ended. These two guys came into the bathroom and they were talking about the show, and they were saying, "Yeah, we really liked the show except for that Asian guy." And I'm like,
No.
"That was my best show."
That
I heard them say the show was great except for that Asian guy, and there was no way they knew I was there. And it was like, no matter what you do, somebody's gonna hate you and
right.
somebody's gonna love you. So
That's
you can't do base your life on
mhm.
trying to please other people because you never will.
Got it. Got it. Got it. I just gotta do me and just keep on going. Okay.
Yeah,
Speaking of comedy, like, how did you get into comedy from writing about Microsoft and hooking up printers and things of that nature? How did you get into comedy?
because writing about printers and Microsoft Office is so boring.
Boring. I got you, man. I got you. I got you. Okay, so but s but comedy, like, that's tough. That's another tough one.
Oh yeah, it is. It's horrible because you go up on stage in front of people who hate you and who want to see you fail, especially at the beginning. Once you get, it's actually easier as a comedian
Mhm.
once you get a name for yourself because now people want you to be funny and they expect you to be funny.
Right,
So I've
right.
seen I've seen famous people, famous comedians, get up there and just say something stupid like, "Oh, the weather's so hot," and people laugh. Oh wow, they think he's the great. Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah,
But when you're
the
getting
weather's so hot,
started,
man. Weather's
yeah,
so hot down here, man. Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Oh, but stand-up comedy is like that's just another lane of creativity that you just wanted to go ahead and attack. It's just another level of creativity that you wanted to put out there in the world.
yeah, it was fun. For me, the fun wasn't performing. It was writing new jokes and seeing if they worked or not. So
Ah,
I'd do like a half hour, 40 minutes, and it would be old jokes that I knew worked, and I'd be bored, but I'd always slip in something new just to see if that would work. And that was the thrill for me. I didn't care about the laughs. I wanted to find out if my new stuff would work.
mhm,
And that's what I enjoyed.
okay. And now I have to go and try to find you with your comedy now. Like I got to try to find that now. Okay, salute to that. You still doing that?
On and off
Okay.
locally. I used
Uh,
to travel around, um, but doing the road is so tiresome
mhm.
because you're always in a strange city. You don't know anyone, and you're basically just waiting to go on stage until the next day. So it's very boring, and then you're gone all the time.
Right, right. Okay. I have to check that out, man. Salute to that. So let's talk about the structure of game. And this is is this the first of a series of books, or is it
It's
included in a part of the series?
it belongs to a series of books, but I'm not writing the whole series. I just wrote that book. So
Okay,
the
I got you. Okay, so the structure of game design. All right, I'm just gonna read a brief description, and then you're gonna break it down in detail for us because I'm really I don't really know exactly what's going on because I hadn't read the book yet, but I'm very interested in this. Let's check this out. The structure of game design. Explains how to test the concept of game idea before actually creating the game, defines the major elements of common game mechanics such as movement, combat, and resource management. The book explains how psychology can influence player behavior in games. That that's just a brief description, and then what I'm reading it goes off into section for section. So is that the gist of the book, or is it? Of course, there's more to it, but it sounds like you're writing. It's, it almost sounds like an algorithm, like a Call of Duty algorithm almost, man. It sounds like that's what I'm reading, but
Yeah,
mm,
kind of, because so I teach at UCSD Extension, which is their non-academic side of
mhm,
UCSD, and I teach programming. And a lot of these kids want to make video games, and
yeah,
the mistake I see them make all the time is they get an idea for a game, and then they start getting the artwork, and then they start programming it. But when you ask them, they have no clue what the game really is all about.
right,
So they rush too soon to making something. And I see this also with screenwriters. Screenwriters will have a great idea, let's have a monster, and it's a vampire, and it's on a cruise ship. And they go, well, I'm going to start writing. And they write about, 30 pages, and then they run out of ideas because they don't know where the story's going. So the book that I wrote, The Structure of Game Design, specifically give people an idea of what are the elements of a game. So like a card game,
yeah,
the main thing about a card game isn't the cards, it's the relationship between the cards. So you think of every card game, it's
mhm,
always a relationship. And if you don't know that, you can't make a card game. It's the same way with the resource management. It's not about, do you have a sword, do you have gold, you have a gun, and you have 5 bullets. It's about feeling powerful because you feel rich because now you have resources. And horror games do the opposite. They take away resources where you only have 3 bullets, or maybe not even a gun at all,
yes,
and two serial killers after you, and you don't have a shoe, and so they take things away. So resource management, again, if you don't know that, you're just gonna think, well, I'm gonna have an inventory in my game, but it's gonna be so boring and so annoying to use. It's not gonna be fun. So you have to know why something exists and how to make it fun and what parts of a game to emphasize. So, like a horror story, you're not going to emphasize resource management, but that's a crucial part of it because the real game is to escape.
yeah,
The resource management helps you escape or hinders you from escaping. So, you've got to know what parts of the games that you want
wow,
to put in your game. Because, again, in a horror game, most likely you're not going to have a gun, you're not going to have weapons of any type. It's more of just escaping, hiding, stealth, trying to outwit the monster, the serial killer after you.
mhm,
It's not. It's completely different from Call of Duty, or because that puts you in a position of power.
yes.
So again, every game can work, and all of these game elements can work, but you've got to know which elements can work together and how to mix them up for your particular game.
Right.
And everyone's game is different.
You know what? And that's what made this year's Call of Duty, um, Modern Warfare 2 campaign mode that much better, because a lot of times in that campaign mode, you were stuck with nothing, and you had to find pieces to, like, if you wanted to make I don't know, a flashlight, or maybe a, a smoke bomb, or maybe if you wanted to create a tool to Jimmy open doors, you had to collect those materials without getting caught by the enemy, right? But before you just came in with a gun and you just was just blasting everything, but that's what made it so challenging and so fun. Because I hadn't played campaign mode in a long time, but anyway, it was dope. And just like you said, adding those little small details about the inventory, making it making yourself have to find stuff. That challenge made it that much more fun. So, man, that's pretty dope. But what's like the next step of it though? Like what takes it even further than that?
I think again, based on what I see with my students,
Mhm.
a lot of them make games that are so similar to games that they like that there's really no point in their game. It's like what makes their game special. So
Yes.
if you like Rocket League, you're probably gonna make games similar to that, which is fine. But you've got to identify what makes your game different because otherwise people would just play Rocket League. They don't need to play your game unless your game has something unique about it. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter. But it's got to have something. And again, most of my students, I see them making the same mistake. They rush to making a game way too soon, and they don't differentiate themselves in any particular way. And I see this with screenwriters a lot. When Die Hard was a big movie, everyone's writing Die Hard movies, and
Yeah.
now Barbie is the big movie, and now people are going to make
They're gonna
movies
make
about
Barbie
Barbie.
clones. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's what Alien, Star Wars, all anytime the big movie, Silence of the Lambs,
Game of
Hollywood
Thrones.
rushes clones out, and they're always bad. They're always because they're missing the reason why Aliens and Star Wars and Silence of the Lambs and all these movies with Barbie were great was because they were different. And Hollywood says, "Well, hey, if they're all different, let's make them the same now."
Yes.
And then they fail.
And I'm not gonna lie, it's the same thing with rappers. They just
Right.
clone. Just they take the cadence, they take their tone, and now you're just a clone of another rapper. And for whatever reason, people are into that. I don't know why, but I'm just gonna pick a section out of the book and we're gonna talk about it. Is that cool?
Yeah, yeah, sure.
All right. Fun in movement. What is that about?
Because a lot of games, the movement is really the I mean, just to take a simple example, like arcade games, Super Mario Brothers, you're jumping from platform to platform.
Yeah.
So that's what's fun is the movement.
Right.
I mean, the rest of the game is cool too, but the movement is what gets to you.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people like to do what's speed running, where they try and get through a level as fast as possible so they can bounce off walls or off ceilings, whatever. That's what's fun in that particular game.
Yeah. That
So
is.
in movement, you've got to see what is fun for that game. Like in a race car game, you're not going to be bouncing off walls, but you've got these super authentic race car games which completely model real race cars, and then you have the other extreme like Mario Kart, where you've got gorillas throwing bananas, and I mean it's the same race car game,
Mhm.
but it's just different emphasis.
Got you. That is a huge point. That's what set Mario off. That jumping from tunnel to tunnel, or mushroom to mushroom, cliff to cliff. And my
Hmm.
favorite part, my most favorite part, this is the old school. You probably don't know nothing about this, y'all people out there. Y'all too young. Listen, at the end of the first Mario, once you made it past the boss and you just ran fast as you can and jumped and hit the flag and slid down that pole. That's the most that was the best part about it because you knew that once you did that, you were moving on to the next level. So fun and movement, that's major key, y'all. Fun. Well, let's do two. I know what I don't. Well, man, wow, might need to do three. I'm sorry. Fun in combat, fun in strategy, and fun in economics.
The combat, it depends on the game. Like some games are like man-to-man combat, so
Yes.
it's the you have a sword or a knife or a club, and you're trying to stab the other person, and that's the fun. While more strategic games where you control armies, you're not really doing you are doing combat, but it's more abstract.
Yeah.
But even then, you can get down to a tactical level where you see that your troops shooting,
Got to flank this
cannon.
way. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So
Hmm.
it can be specific or it can be abstract. So again, it depends on the emphasis of the game. Do you want to make combat the fun part where you man to man like Street Fighter, you're making the move, you're jumping, or do you want to make it more abstract? Again, there's no right or wrong there. It's the emphasis for your particular game.
Yeah. So
And
Oh,
then the other one was economics. That goes to like, well, like Monopoly. You just want to get rich.
right.
That's the whole point of the game, and
Yeah.
that's what you want to do. So it's all about making money, losing money. How do you get money from other people? How do you make money? How can you increase your chances of making money? And the other games like stock market simulation games,
Yeah.
real estate games. It's all about making money,
Right.
which is the fun part for that type of game.
Yeah. And every game that I can think of, it's all about economics. Like if you're collecting, like, even with Call of Duty, if you're collecting in Warzone, if you're hitting these boxes, you got to hit the boxes to get your money to buy a loadout. So that's a challenge. That's another element of fun to the game, another challenge to the game, right? And
I,
GTA, GTA, you got to get your money up to buy things in GTA. Um, uh, I mean, it just goes back to almost every game ever played. Um, Last one. How important is storytelling into a game?
um, some games don't need it at all,
Mhm,
um, because like a race car game, the thrill is just racing.
mhm,
You don't need a story. It's not like this is a bad guy, this is a good guy. But the other extreme, you have like the romance games where you have to interact with people, or the detective games where you have to interview people and find out their alibi, found out clues. So story can be very important in those games.
yeah,
So again, my whole book is just pointing out different elements of what makes a game, and then my hope is that people will pick the elements that are important for their game,
yeah,
and then know how to emphasize it and know how to make it fun. So if you're making a game where you're trying to survive on an island, maybe combat's probably not the primary purpose, but it's like still important, and you want it to be fun. But just searching for food,
yeah,
for tools, that might be the fun part. So again, it depends on your game that you're making. And if you don't know what type of game you're making, you're never gonna make a good game because you don't know what you're
yeah,
doing.
right. That's a fact. Um, and salute to that, man. I think that this is, I mean, obviously, it's going to help a lot of people. Is this a part of your curriculum? Like some of this book, is it a part of your curriculum that you teach?
Yeah, I mean, I based it on the students, on what I was seeing and what I think could help them. So
Ah,
a lot of it is based on the students,
okay. And
the mistakes I saw them making.
where can we find the book, and so we can get it out there to the public and for people that for the right people that's looking to get into the business or looking to sharpen their skills with the game structure design.
Amazon. That's the basically
Amazon.
the main place to buy any book.
Sure. Amazon. All right. So listen, good people. The Amazon link will be in the description for video game design. Damn. The structure of game design will be in the link of the description. Wallace Wang. I still got like 2 or 3 more questions.
Okay,
This question: how many books total have you written?
maybe 40, 50. But the problem with computer books is like Stephen King can write a novel, and 30 years from now, people will still want to read and buy his novel.
Right.
I write a book about how to connect WordPerfect to a printer, and 2 years later, nobody cares anymore.
Right. Okay. I got you. So, are you heavy into the uh ebook versus paperback, or like, I know everything doesn't have to be a paperback book or a whole big publication, right?
Right. Um, I thought ebooks were going to be bigger than they are,
Hmm.
and they aren't. for me as a computer a nonfiction writer. For romance, ebooks are extremely lucrative
Okay.
because people don't want to see carry around a paperback of a romance with some guy with his shirt off and
Right.
holding a woman because it's
Yeah.
embarrassing. But
Right.
as an ebook, nobody can see what you're reading.
Yes.
So romance novels are the most lucrative for ebooks.
What about, are you into the audiobook space with your publications?
Um, I'm not because nobody's gonna want to hear me say, click the file menu, click print, put the paper in your printer, turn on your printer. You know, how many pages are you gonna print? Type 5 or whatever.
Right.
Audiobooks aren't gonna work with computer books.
Right.
Or even for nonfiction, like what I write, it's more for fiction or for nonfiction that's not instructional like
Right.
that.
Okay. I understand. I can dig it. I can understand. Um, the last question: how many books have you read?
I try and read a book a week.
What?
Yeah,
Since when?
because well, the reason I do that is because I remember when I had an office job at General Dynamics, and people who have a job like that, where they go to the same place and see the same people and pretty much do the same thing over and over again, no matter what type of job you have, it's a very limited point of view.
Yeah.
And by reading books, you can get exposed to different ideas, different fields, different ways of thinking. And so I'm always reading books, and I go to the library all the time, so I don't have to keep buying books. And just by reading, you can expose yourself to so much. I heard a motivational speaker say if you read 5 books on any subject,
Mhm.
you're going to know more about that subject than 90% of the population. And so I just pick a topic and start reading about it if it's interesting to me,
Yeah.
and I stick with it. And then I move on, or come back to it, or whatever. So I see reading as a way to just learn more about the world, without having to physically go, uh, in business, or I don't want to make the mistakes if I can avoid them.
Right.
If I can learn from people who have made the mistakes and they're trying to teach me how not to make mistakes,
Yeah.
I want to learn that.
Got you. Got you. So if you had to put a number on it, like I know, like for me, I'm at 146, 49. It's so the number is so small I can just keep count of it because I have all my books here with me, like on the shelf. So if you had to put a number on it, what would be the number?
Of how many books I've read?
Yes. Yes.
I have no idea. I mean, I've been reading. I started this. I remember it like 87, 88, trying to read a book a week.
Wait,
So
what? Yo,
yeah,
I was like 7. You yo,
so yeah. It just
oh wow, you're well into the thousands, right?
yeah. I have no idea. But again, sometimes you read a book
Mhm.
and you learn what not to do as a writer, and
Okay.
sometimes you learn techniques that you go, "Wow, I wish I had written that. I want to write something like that." And sometimes you read information that either confirms what you know or it gives you a different perspective of what you know.
Yeah.
So you learn something from every book, even if you learned nothing. You realize this author sucks,
Right.
and you don't read that book from that author again.
Okay. You know what my problem with reading is? Like, especially if I'm reading a good book, I don't like to close it out. I hate to close it out, you know? Um, but wow, so I was like, you're in the thousands, right? So trying to think like, what was your for me, I want to know your oh, wait, before I ask this question, do you ever go back to a book and read it again, like a reread
Yeah,
every now and then? Like something that was
yeah.
so fire.
Yeah, some
Okay,
books that I think are so good, I'll read them again, or sometimes I'll just buy them so I can keep them and read them again.
right. Got you. I'm the same way. The one book that I always go back and read like every couple years is the autobiography of Malcolm X. I could never close that book out because he dies near the end. And that part I just can't read past that part. So I always just read up to it and then I just like, all right, I'm done with the book, right? So but but for us, but for the people that's interested, is going to be interested in this. What are your top 5 books that you recommend? I mean, now that just spawned another question. I'm gonna split this question up. If some no, I'm gonna ask the question as is. But what are your top 5 recommended books?
For anything in particular, or
But see,
just
that's why I wanted to split it up. See, now I want to ask you, what are your top 5 favorite books? Or what top 5 books do you recommend for someone? I was going to ask about getting that wanted to get into the gaming um, game design. Um, but just I want to hear your top 5 favorite books of all time.
oh, um, uh, uh, one of my favorite books. It was made into a movie. It was called Birdie, and it's about a guy who thinks he's a canary. And that sounds very weird, but it's the whole story is about a guy who goes to World War II
Mhm.
and he comes up back messed up and he thinks he's a canary. And his friend, who is also sent to war, is assigned to try and snap him out of it. And it's a weird premise, but it's an amazing book. And Nicolas Cage was actually starred in the movie,
Okay.
and the movie wasn't that good, but it was an excellent book. Again, it's a very weird premise, but it really makes you
Sounds good.
sends you into the mind of the guy who thinks he's a canary and how he got to the point of being a regular soldier to thinking he's a canary.
Okay. I'm gonna look that one up. Birdie. Okay.
It was a guy. The author is William Wharton, and when he came out with the book Birdie, the rumor was which is not true. The rumor was it was actually J.D. Salinger who wrote Catcher in the Rye, who
Mhm.
was writing under a pseudonym because that's how good the book was when it hit the market. People thought there's no way a first time author could write a book this intense and emotionally engaging unless he was an expert like J.D. Salinger, who
Yeah.
wrote Catcher in the Rye and a couple other well known books. So, again, another book that I really like is George Orwell's 1984 because it's so hilarious because what from a dystopian point of view because the government is trying to teach people lies and the people are accepting them, which sounds kind of familiar to
Mhm.
today.
Yeah.
And in 1984, to keep people from rebelling against the government is always pointing out an imaginary enemy for them to attack and get mad about, which again sounds very familiar to what's going on now. It's like, oh, black people are trying to get civil rights, hate them. Gay
Yeah.
people are trying to get civil rights, hate them,
Mhm.
discriminate against them. So it's
It's
very
always a fight somewhere.
timely. Yeah, it's still applicable. So those are two books that I really like. I'm trying. Oh, one book that I I like reading novels, and I knew nothing about westerns
Ah,
because
yeah.
so I thought westerns were all the John Wayne type of stories. So I decided I'm going to look up the novels that are considered the best westerns and read them and see what they're like. And they totally blew me away. The two that I loved was called The Riders of the Purple Sage, and the best one is called The Shootist. which John Wayne actually starred in. But The Shootist is about a gunslinger who's dying of like cancer. And because he's dying, all the rival gunslingers
Hmm.
want to kill him. So they can be the one to say, I killed the best gunslinger in the West.
Yeah.
The trouble is, he is still so good, he's killing all of his rivals, even though he's sick and dying. And so he has to come up with a plan so he can die and kill the people who are trying to kill him. So an amazing novel. I
Yes.
thought westerns were just like dime novels, just trash. And the Riders of the Purple Sage and The Shootist just totally blew me away as great literature, no matter what genre it is. Those were great westerns.
That sounds like a great movie script. Like it should be a movie, man.
Well, yeah, they made The Shootist. Well, they made both of those books into movies. But The Shootist was John Wayne, and ironically, John Wayne starred as the gunslinger when John Wayne was also sick and dying.
Oh, in real life.
Yeah, in real life.
Wow.
But the movie just wasn't as good as the book. The book is so much better than the movie. So I definitely recommend the book, because if you see the movie, you're gonna think it's okay, but the book is just so far superior.
Okay. Do you have two more, or is that's where you want to close it out? Because I know you like if you've
Um,
read thousands of books, it's probably like so much just running through your mind.
yeah, I'm looking at my bookshelf now.
You probably need a top 1,000 books. You know.
What two authors that I would recommend are Ray Bradbury and Rod Serling. Rod Serling created the Twilight Zone series,
I
and
like.
yeah, and the reason Rod Serling's books are so good is because he was a playwright, and so he was running into a lot of uh, obstacles trying to make they called them teleplays back then, movies for TV.
Yeah.
So he had a story about a, a lynching, and the networks were terrified. They said we can't show black people being lynched, so they made it the whole story. They changed it from a black man being wrongly accused of a crime and being lynched to a white man being accused of a crime and being lynched by white people, which basically destroys the whole premise of the story. So,
Right.
so Rod Serling got sick of that, and that's why he created the Twilight Zone, so he could disguise his stories in science fiction.
Wow. And okay.
And Ray Bradbury is interesting because he was a science fiction author who didn't like technology. He used a typewriter back, of course, when he got started in the 50s, everyone
Mhm.
used a typewriter. But instead of moving on to a word processor, he stuck with typewriters. And he never drove a car. He always took the bus because he didn't trust technology. But he
Mm.
was a science fiction author.
Yeah. It's
So Ray Bradbury's stories are always about not the technical advances, but how the technical advances affect people negatively most of the time.
yeah. Okay. So he would write about like 5G, like the 5G conspiracy. You know?
Well, actually, what the story I remember most from Ray Bradbury was he wrote a story about people who had smartwatches,
Mhm.
and because they had smartwatches, they spent all their time looking at their smartwatches and not looking at each other, and not looking at the scenery around them, not enjoying life
Yeah.
because they're too busy looking at the screens.
Mm.
And he wrote that in the 50s, and now people are walking around with their phones and walking into traffic, walking
Oh,
into trees.
he wrote
Uh,
that in the 50s?
yeah. So that's why I like Ray Bradbury, because he was a visionary
Yeah.
who's warning people about technology, even though he's a science fiction author.
Wow. Yeah, I have ordering to do. I'm gonna look these guys up and
Or go to the library.
what a lot. I like that. I want a huge collection of books like you. I got a little bookshelf. It holds about I don't know like 100 books. I want to get the big one, and I'm like look at my. I'm gonna show all my friends. Look at all my books. Check it out.
And they're gonna look at you and go, "Well, why don't you have ebooks? You'll have more room."
Well, what about audiobooks? Shut up. Look at my books. That's what that's gonna be. So, but I don't know. I guess we're coming to a close, man. I think it's been. Have we covered everything that we needed to cover?
Yeah, I think so.
You know what? We could never cover this much history, people. You know. All right. But listen, I appreciate you, Wallace Wang. I think that I don't know why I said your whole name like that. That was pretty funny. I appreciate you, Wallace. I don't know if I want to call you Mr. Wang or just Wallace, but I appreciate your wealth of knowledge here. You've helped me personally because I had some personal questions and some things that I needed to get answered, and I was really really glad that I saw your name on the schedule, and I was like, yes, going down, author, going to speak my language. But anyway, look, I appreciate you coming through the Game Changers podcast. Um, it's been a real one. To be real, it's been a real one. So I appreciate you. People, go out and hit Amazon and get the book. All right. Please go get the book. Structure of Game Design. Go get it. Imperative for your careers to go get that. Right? Not gonna make it. You're not gonna make it on your own. Go get it. All right. So we're gonna close it out. Oh, my bad. Do you have any socials to shout out? Anybody that you want to shout out? Your family, your team, anyone that you want to share love to? This is the time to do it.
Sure, my wife. How about that?
Okay. Shout out to the wife. To your wife. Any socials that the people can go follow you on or just hit you up and say, hey, thank you for giving us those giving us the game, I guess.
Um, yeah, I have a screenwriting site called the 15-minute movie method. So if they want to learn more about storytelling for video games or for screenplays, go to the 15minutemoviemethod.com.
The 15-minute movie method, people. Okay. That. But hey, if that's it, we're gonna close it out. As always, live life, show love, be great, and always keep the kill feed lit. For your guy Didio Nassus, Mr. Wallace Wang. Way out. Peace, 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 peace. Holla. Thank you, Mr. Wallace Wang. I keep saying your
Thank
name
you.
so